And welcome everybody to the 107th episode of the Fact Is podcast. We're your hosts, Nate Moses.
And Stu Mowbray filling in for Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan is not here tonight. We are letting him have off tonight, letting him go enjoy his in between Christmas and New Year's. He's got some things that he's celebrating with his family. So good for you, Ryan. Hope you're out there having a great time. And tonight we got me and Stuart. So without further ado, let's get to talking. So one of the things that we want to talk about, just kind of open up this segment, is how about that weather?
Crazy.
How about Buffalo? What they got going on with the snowstorm approaching? I think 40 deaths at this point with the ice and snowstorm they got going on. What else was it that we had going on around the U.S. that was just absolutely mind blowing?
Flooding out in the West Coast right now.
That's right, flooding out in the West Coast over in California. Don't want to miss that, of course. What else we got? So I know here in Virginia, personally, I mean, it's been colder than we've experienced in a long while. So I know, that ain't necessarily the most fun thing in the world.
Warmed up today, though.
It did warm up today. It's supposed to warm up Friday, too, hopefully. Yeah. Nice current moving into no meteorology here. But yeah, it was been a pretty crazy turn of events with all the weather we got going on. So a lot of people want to blame global warming, which is definitely something that most people see as not helpful. So I can understand people's perspective there. But what do you think, Stu? Do you think a lot of this can be contributed to global warming, or do you think this is more just the way the world is? What do you think?
I don't know. My common sense would say it's just weather.
Right. And it's, we've had bad weather our entire lives, so it's hard to just kind of pinpoint this on global warming.
I don't have any kind of study or
statistical data behind that. Yeah. So I kind of agree with you there.
I would say it's just winter weather and whatnot.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there, but pretty wild around the U.S. But we got a lot bigger concerns going on around the U.S. than just some weather. We got a lot of interesting topics that we're going to discuss tonight that it would be awesome to hear everybody's opinion on. So before we jump into those topics, just want to remind everybody, please make sure you all follow this page. You follow The Fact Is podcast, of course, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok. We are all over, so please make sure that you all are following our socials in every way you possibly can, because that helps us out drastically. The idea for us is to be able to reach everybody, everything and everybody. So please make sure that you all are helping us achieve that goal by following us on all of our socials and helping us there. So without further ado, Stuart, you ready to jump right into the episode and get to these topics here?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. Fantastic. So let's begin with Twitter and what's been going on there. So Twitter was actually apparently rigging the COVID debate, which is interesting here. So let's talk about this. By the time reporter David Zweig got to the 10th floor of the conference room at the Twitter headquarters on Market Street in San Francisco, the story of the Twitter files has already international news. Matt Taibbi, Michael Schellenberg, I'm not even going to try to pronounce all these names. Y'all can read these. And I had revealed evidence of hidden blacklists of Twitter users, the way Twitter acted as kind of the FBI subsidiary, and how company executives rewrote the platform's policies on the fly to accommodate political bias and pressure. So I'm going to leave this right here just so you all know what the title of the article is, and then I'm going to actually read the rest of it right here from my laptop, make it easy on me. So let's begin. All right. So I'd always had a primary job of the press way to be skeptical of power, especially the power of the government. But during the COVID-19 pandemic, I and so many others found that the legacy media had shown, had shown itself to largely operate as a messaging platform for our public health institutions. Those institutions operated in near total lockstep. in part by purging international dissidents and discrediting outside experts. Twitter became an essential alternative. It was a place where those with public health expertise and perspective at odds with official policy could air their views, and where curious citizens could find such information. So the often... I'm just going to make this easier on myself. Move this over here, this up here. All right, there we go. So, the reinforced and established narrative and the suppressed views, even scientific evidence that ran the contrary. So, was I imagining things? Was it a pattern, and that I and others witnessed proof of purposeful intent, an algorithm gone rogue, or something else? In other words, when it came to COVID and the information shared on a service used by hundreds of millions of people, what exactly was being amplified and what was being banned or censored? So when the Free Press asked if I would go to Twitter to peek behind the curtain, I took the first flight out of New York, and this is what they found. So the United States government pressured Twitter to elevate certain content and suppress other content about COVID-19 and the pandemic. Internal emails that I viewed at Twitter showed that both the Trump and Biden administration directly pressed Twitter executives to moderate the platform's content according to their wishes. At the onset of the pandemic, the Trump administration was especially concerned about panic buying and sought help from tech companies to combat misinformation. According to emails sent by Twitter employees in the wake of meetings with the White House, one area of so-called misinformation runs on grocery stores. The trouble is that it wasn't misinformation, that there actually were runs on goods. And it wasn't just Twitter. The meetings with the Trump White House were also attended by Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and others. When the Biden administration took over, its agenda for the American people can be summed up as be very afraid of COVID and do exactly what we say to stay safe. Good Lord. In July of 2021, then U.S. Surgeon Vivek Murthy released a 22-page advisory concerning what the World Health Organization referred to as an infodemic, and called on social media platforms to do more to shut down misinformation. We are asking them to step up, Murthy said. We can't wait longer for them to take aggressive action. That's the message the White House had already taken directly to Twitter executives and private channels. One of the Biden administration's first meetings requests was about COVID, with a focus on anti-vaxxer accounts, according to a meeting summary by Lauren Kulbersten, Twitter's head of U.S. public policy. They were especially concerned about Alex Berenson, a journalist skeptical of lockdown and mRNA vaccines, who had hundreds of thousands of followers on the platform. By the summer of 2021, the day after Murthy's memo, Biden announced publicly the social media companies were killing people by allowing misinformation about vaccines. Just hours later, Twitter locked Berenson out of his account and then permanently suspended him the next month. Berenson sued Twitter. He ultimately settled with the company and is now back on the platform. As part of the lawsuit, Twitter was compelled to provide certain internal communications. They revealed that the White House had directly met with Twitter employees and pressured them to take action on Berenson. The summary of meetings by Kulbersten, emailed to colleagues in December of 2022, adds new evidence to the White House pressure campaign and illustrates how it tried to directly influence what content was allowed on Twitter. So let's just go ahead and stop there. That's a pretty good stopping point. You know, the fact that it was both Biden and Trump administrations that were pressuring social media websites to, or really all kind of tech companies to censor and discredit certain people just because they disagreed with the government. I mean, is that not like a totalitarian government? Is that not the definition of, you know,
what China does?
What totalitarianism looks like, or what communism looks like? I mean, I don't understand how we are not in more of an uproar about this.
I guess Twitter still had a choice.
Yeah, Twitter still had a choice, but it was pretty
scary.
Yeah, it's pretty intense to see that all of these companies, whether it was Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, it doesn't matter, they were willing to just fall in line with what the government said and listen to their orders, right?
Yeah.
So that right there shows you cannot trust your information off social media. You can't trust that it won't be biased. You can't trust that it won't come with some sort of, background issue. I don't understand how this is not getting more attention than what it should. Because at this point, can we believe anything that social media tells us? Is there any way to trust it? If your government can literally go and say, hey, run this or discredit these people, make sure you shadow ban or publicly limit the amount of viewership this page gets. I don't understand where we go from here. That's
why I'm for a free speech platform.
Right. And I agree with you there. I think free speech is ultimately the best way to go about it. Now, and here's the thing, if you put everything out there, right? If you allow people to say whatever they want, for example,
let people debate ideas.
Yeah, just for example, right? Like if somebody comes out there and says, like Kanye right now is getting absolutely hammered because he came out and said something about Hitler, right? And was essentially kind of praising Hitler with Alex Jones on his podcast. Now, that right there, people shut him down immediately. So idiotic things that are put out in the light.
Elon suspended his account.
Elon suspended his account from Twitter, and he's gotten major amount of backlash for that. But that's my point, right? If you say something so outlandish and so stupid, people are going to reject you, right? So the point is, allow everything to be thrown out there. That way you can combat it with factual information. That's the way I look at it. Now, I don't know if anybody else has. I don't know if anybody else has any kind of thoughts on that, if anybody has, a combating argument. But as of right now, that's the way I look at it. Again, if you put everything out on the internet, people are going to find a way to absolutely bolster you, or they will praise you and say that, what your word is really good and what you're doing is good. So right. Interesting take there. I don't know about... I don't know about you, Stu, but how do you feel about all this situation going on? What do you think?
It's not surprising.
No, it's definitely not surprising.
By any means. But I guess, like you said, take note that both the Trump administration and Biden administration, both of them are to blame for this.
Definitely both.
I guess Twitter is to blame as well because they went through with it. But, we constantly saw people questioning the science of COVID and vaccines. And if you questioned that on Twitter, you were banned.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and we saw what the results of that were. So
yeah,
crazy.
Just questioning.
Yeah, that's the crazy part. Questioning them, right? Yeah. Like you can't even question them.
No.
Or you get banned or you get pushed out.
We all saw that for 2 years. Now we just actually have facts behind it. But we all like the shadow banning,
pen to paper. Yep.
Everything that's come out about Twitter
was factual.
We already knew about, but now it's just set in stone.
Yep. And it's unfortunate to see how that played out. Of course, nobody wants, at least I don't want anything like that to have to occur in our country, right? Again, we believe in a free country, and there has to be a separation between your social medias and your government, right? Your government cannot run your social medias. They should not be able to influence your social medias. I feel like politicians or corporations shouldn't be able to influence the policies behind your politicians, right? I think it works both ways. So this is concerning. This is something I think people need to pay more attention to, and we need to bring to light. Because we're going down a very dark path, and it seems like nobody's really blowing up about this.
Says the Biden team was very angry that Twitter hadn't been more aggressive in deplatforming multiple accounts.
Yeah.
They wanted them to do more.
They wanted them to even deplatform more people, which is insane of its own, right? Because again, you've already been deplatforming people. You've already been limiting people's viewership just because they spoke out against COVID, against whether it be the vaccine or the lockdowns or whatever, and it all got suppressed. That's horrible.
If you had a different viewpoint, they just took your account down.
Yeah, so we'll ultimately see what happens there. Dean comes in saying, "Stu."
What's up, Dean?
What's up, Dean? Olivia. Dean. Olivia says, "Do you think Twitter will change with Elon in charge?" So that's the interesting thing with Twitter. I think they will. I mean, ultimately, they have been changing little by little. He's gotten some flack out there, but I honestly
he's done some
think
banning of his own.
I think Elon's done some pretty good things, and he has done some banning. And the question is, when does somebody cross that line when they need to be banned, right?
Yeah, it's definitely better than what it was.
It's definitely better. Elon's ultimate intention is not to actually be the CEO of Twitter. He's ultimately going to find a team to run that for him. It's just now under his guidelines, which I think is a lot more of a free speech platform than what it used to be, because they're showing their own faults. They're showing their own mistakes. Like, hey, Twitter did back the left. They were paid to put up more left-leaning posts. They were paid more to take away the viewership of conservative accounts. They were paid to put out there of more information that is leaning more government pro-government than they are against the government. There's a lot of things that Elon is revealing to us, showing their own faults and what the company has done wrong. So I think ultimately they're going down the right path, because it's showing when you're able to sit there, look somebody in the eyes and say, hey, we screwed up. Like, they're looking the American public in the eye, or really the world in the eye, and saying, we screwed up. This is what happened. These were our faults, and this is where we're going to make it better. I mean, I think that's the best thing you can ultimately do.
Yeah, he just don't become what you wanted to get rid of.
Yeah. And that, yeah. What is the famous saying? You live long enough to see yourself become the villain, right? Yeah. So yeah, I don't believe Elon will go down that road. I mean, he has so many other junctures going on right now with creating solar panels, Tesla, everything going on there, SpaceX. He's got so many things going on.
He's came up with some weird ideas though for Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Paying for the blue check mark.
Yep.
That was one. But then he's banned journalists. Like, they have that, what is it, linked, where like people can put a link in their social media,
right? And
you click it and it has like all their different social medias. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, all linked together.
Yeah. So he was going to ban that. He didn't want you promoting other social medias on Twitter.
Oh, that's interesting. And this could be early stages. Hey, he's sitting in a room discussing it with his board. They're trying to come up with ideas, right? I mean, until it becomes set in stone, there's nothing too concerning, I would say.
I don't know.
I think, but we'll see what happens.
He's been kind of inconsistent sometimes, though.
He can be. And I mean, to
he's
his
done
own
good.
fault.
He's done good, but then there's also critiques.
Yeah. I mean,
that's my take on it.
To his own fault, right? Like, we're all humans. We're all going to make mistakes. But that's the thing. Ultimately, I think he's better than what the majority is.
Right. I mean, he's human at the end of the day.
Yeah, everybody is. And we're all going to make mistakes. But I think following Elon is probably the best thing we've done so far.
I want him to make it the most free speech platform.
Yeah, 100% agree. So real quick, we'll touch up on Dean's topic or comment, and we'll move on to the next topic we have for the night. So just post facts and let people come up with their own conclusions and opinions. Let people think for themselves instead of trying to influence everyone. And I agree with that,
exactly.
Right? Because you'll see on our platform, right? We'll go over the article, we'll go over the facts, and we leave it at that. At that point, it's just opinion based and it's discussion, because that's what we're here to do. We're ultimately here to discuss, right? So we love posting the facts and letting people come up with their own kind of conclusions, but then, of course, we like to discuss this stuff ourselves. I mean, this is what me, Stuart, and Ryan are passionate about. We're passionate about helping people. We're passionate about coming up with different ideas and challenging and having constructive criticism and open, honest discourse, right? That's just what we love. That's what we love to do. And that's why we've created this platform where we're at today. So,
also, beautiful. With this Twitter thing and social media, think about like all the propaganda that was on TV.
Right.
Like, you used to think smoking was good for you. People used to think sugar was good for them.
Yep.
And then now, pharmaceutical companies dominate the commercials.
Do you know how many countries allow pharmaceuticals to?
I think we're the only
promote?
one.
Yep, us, and I think the only other one is like Brazil or Venezuela.
Advertisement
like
and commercials on TV and stuff.
Yep.
So I mean, now it's like it's transitioning into social media where the government's reaching out to these companies.
Yep.
So if you think they're doing that with social media, what do you think they're doing with corporations?
Yep. And that's where you get down that rabbit hole, right? If this side can do it, this side is definitely going to do it, right? Like if this entity is going to get involved into the social media aspects, of course they are as well. So, and that's where a lot of this controversy is coming from. So, we'll of course keep on top of that and make sure
the government just needs to stay out of things.
I agree.
That's my view.
And there's a certain time and space for the federal government, your state government, local governments, whatever. And right now, this is something they need to stay out of. So
yeah, like any time they'd get press on something, just trust the science or follow the science.
Yep. And well, speaking of science, let's jump right into our next topic. The CDC funding decisions were based largely on politics and not science. This is a great article because I love this. Let me pull this up on my laptop and we will be reading. So, CDC funding decisions based largely on politics, not science. For the second year in a row, the Centers for Disease Control has been caught ignoring science and letting liberal interest groups set its policies. In 2021, the American Pediatric Academy and the Children's Hospital Association tracked COVID-19 statistics in children, and the data show no relationship between mask mandates and the rate at which children caught the disease. In the face of the evidence, the other data showing that masks harm children's development, the CDC supported masking students after being pressured by the National Education Association, which is the largest teachers union in the. Now comes word that CDC is allowing partisan politics to influence its policies. This time, gun control activists got the CDC to remove research from its website. Yet the CDC is trusted to impartially dole out millions of dollars for public health research on firearms. From 2020 to 2022, the CDC National Institutes of Health each spent about $50 million on such research. Until May of this year, the CDC cited a 2013 National Academics of Science report showing that an annual number of defensive gun uses range from 64,000 to 3 million. Good Lord, that's a huge difference in thresholds there. 64 to 3 million? Good God, you'd think they'd be able to bring it to a little bit of a tighter window there, but okay. The CDC website listed the upper figure at 2.5 million, but now the CDC has removed from its website all those numbers and even the link to the NAS report. Following introductions from the White House and Democratic Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois, gun control advocates linked up with the CDC. They had a private meeting and numerous email exchanges in which they lobbied hard to have the CDC remove the information. That 2.5 million number needs to be killed, buried, dug up, killed again, and buried again. Mark Bryant, who runs the Gun Violence Archive, wrote to CDC officials after their meeting, "It is highly misleading, is used out of context, and I honestly believe it has zero value, even as an outlier point in honest DGU discussions." He was upset that the 2.5 million number had been used so often to stop gun control legislation. So the Department of Justice National Crime Victimization Survey estimates that they're between 64,000 and 120,000. That's a lot better. Instances each year in which a firearm is used defensively. This is on the low end of all the other social science on the subject. Some 20 such surveys have been conducted. 3 of them show about 800,000 defensive gun uses a year. All the other estimates are over 1 million, and with one as high as 3.5 million. The average estimate is about 2 million. William English of Georgetown University surveyed 16,708 gun owners just last year and estimated that there are about 1.67 million such uses annually. The National Crime Victimization Survey's low numbers result from its choice of its screening question. If it first asks a person if they have been a victim of a crime, only respondents who answer yes, and then asks if they have used a gun defensively. Yet people who have successfully brandished a gun generally do not view themselves as being victimized. Last little touching point we'll talk here. Devin Hughes, who runs another gun control group, GVpedia, argued in July 6 of 2021 email to the CDC that it should use the Gun Violence Archive estimate of defense gun uses. Hughes claimed that the GVA is the most widely accepted compendium of gun violence data. Between January and mid-December this year, the GVA claims that there were only 1,112 defensive gun uses. So, some very...
they did their homework.
Yeah, no joke. But I mean, the numbers there were just kind of all over the place. It was really kind of hard to see, to understand at first. I mean... Good Lord. I mean, the first number, though, I'm sorry, it went from 68,000 to 3.5 million. And if that's what the CDC is posting on their website, they really need to... Yeah, I'm glad they took it down because that is just not factual by any means. But now that they were actually able to bring the number a little closer and they were able to do the research and show where all this different data came from, you know, it makes it a little bit better and a little bit more accurate. So I can appreciate that. But let's talk about this. I mean, this is pretty insane. It doesn't shock me again that another organization...
This is a government organization.
Yeah, this is a government organization this time that is being led to make decisions based off of political views. We're just seeing it with almost everything now, and we're allowing it to happen. When are we going to stop this, right? When are our politicians going to come out and say, look, this is wrong. We need to start going down the path of accountability, number one. Number two, we need to find a way to stop this from happening in the future. When is somebody in our government going to come out, hit the mainstream? You know, the biggest issue I have, whether it's Trump, Biden, doesn't matter, Twitter. They all go to Twitter. They all go to social media to make these big old statements and say what they have to say. Dude, get on a podium, reach every single national news network out there, get on TV and say, the CDC just got found guilty of doing this, right? There's evidence behind it. We're going to take it to court. We're going to actually sue them, and we are going to make sure this doesn't happen again in the future. When is anybody going to stand up and actually show that side of leadership, that side of accountability?
That's not going to happen.
That's part of our issue. I mean, I would say that's one of our biggest part of our issues, right? There's
so many clips and videos of government officials saying, follow CDC guidelines.
Yeah.
Follow CDC guidelines.
Almost every single one of them,
so
too.
So if you think that the government can talk to Twitter about deplatforming people and banning people, what do you think they can do with their own agency, government agency, the CDC?
And that's the scariest part. And, you know, so many people, whether you back Trump or Biden or whatever, you know, oh, Trump is against all the fake news. You were part of the fake news. You were pushing that fake media. You were influencing it with your power. Nobody is for the people that is actually in this government. Nobody's standing up and saying, when do we stop this? When does it end? And
yeah, I mean, he was a part of the Twitter stuff.
Yeah, he was a part of Twitter, and then I assume CDC because he was part of our government, right? And his administration was...
He drank the swamp water.
Yeah, he drank the swamp water just like anybody else. So it's so frustrating to hear people say, oh, he's so different from politicians, or, you know, this person's different from politicians. Then where are they?
That's sold good the first time, 2016. It's not going to sell again.
It can't. Like, people, I don't believe, are that ignorant, right? Like, we have this information in front of us where people argue we're in the information era. And you could argue that if you know how to do your research. But it's also difficult because a lot of people think we're in the misinformation era. We have so much information that hits you all at once. I mean, like we've talked about, we could do an episode every day. If we had the funds for it, if we had the ability to kind of make this a full-time gig, we could do an episode every day with
10
the amount of
topics
information.
for 3 hours.
Seriously. And that's how much information there is out there and how you have to filter through it. So,
what did you see what the FBI said about the Twitter stuff?
No, what did FBI say?
They use the word misinformation.
So are they saying that Twitter purposely put out misinformation, or are they trying to say that this is disinformation about?
They're saying the stuff that's being spread across Twitter right now is misinformation.
But it's from Elon himself. He's looking at the reports. He's looking at the money. He's doing the audits. I'm confused about that. How are you going to sit here and tell a guy when a person? Let's be very mindful here, right? We got to give Elon.
Think how many people are going to see that and believe that. You're like, yeah, they're right.
Right, like
it is misinformation.
Okay, Elon Musk, whether you like him, love him, hate him, whatever, you have to give him credit for the fact that he's been able to run multiple successful billion-dollar companies between, again, Tesla, SpaceX, the solar panels that he's doing with the roof right now. Why can't I think of it? I can't think of the name of that company right off the top of my head if anybody wants to help me out there. But, yeah, my point is it's coming from an individual that obviously knows how to handle
there's
audits.
Documents, there's emails.
He knows how to handle audits, emails, documents. He knows how to go through P&Ls.
I don't know how the FBI can come out and say that it's misinformation.
Exactly.
So, I mean, think how many times you've heard that the past couple years.
Misinformation.
All the CDC guidelines. Well, now that we see that these activists had them take down data, I mean, come on.
Yeah. I mean, it's getting old, and it's getting...
Not everything. You have to go down some deep rabbit hole conspiracy theory, but, I mean... These are the facts, and this stuff's happening, and it's not good.
Well, and that's exactly the point, right? This isn't a conspiracy.
No.
This is out in the open now. Like, it is very clear as day. We have mainstream
people
media
were calling
reporting
it conspiracy.
Yeah, well, people can call it conspiracy all they want. Look at who's reporting it.
Before the documents came out.
Before the documents come out.
They were calling it that.
Yes. Well, now, because, and just like anything else
in this country. Same with the Hunter Biden laptop. They called that misinformation.
Yep.
They called Trump getting elected Russian misinformation. How many times have they said Russian misinformation?
Too many to count. So to your point, right? Everybody was being steered towards it was misinformation. Now, hindsight 2020, but just like anything else in this country, innocent until proven guilty. So those accusations can come out. Like, we can talk about those all day long, but now we have actual evidence is the difference, right? Now we have the evidence, and it's
That's
easy
why
to...
sometimes it's worth.
Right.
Waiting.
It is worth, and it's even worth if you hear the conspiracy, oh, maybe we should look into that, right? But... It's
you can't
always
put all your eggs in that basket.
Exactly. It's always good to be, and that's why conspiracy theorists they're, oh my gosh, we're right.
But critically thinking is important.
That's the problem. People don't critically think. People don't actually take the time to look over the evidence. We don't wait to see for the facts. We just, it's not like the Blair Witch Trials, or Blair Witch Trials. The Salem Witch Trials. I can't. It's not like the.
That's just a movie, mate.
Yeah, right. It's not like the Salem witch trials, though. You can't just go around persecuting people with absolutely no evidence behind it. Or like, what was it back when we were during the Cold Wars and McCarthyism, when they used to go around and round up anybody they believed was a communist, and they would you can't do that stuff. So I understand people's frustration about, oh, we were right the whole time. Yes, but at the same time, you have to wait for the hard facts to come out, and now we are seeing that. So finally, we are getting pen to paper. We are getting facts. And we're able to see
data
this.
Is not accurate.
Exactly. And we see that our government has been paid off. I mean...
What data are we supposed to go by?
I don't know. Yeah, don't ask me. I'm not... That's above my pay grade.
So if you can tell me that the CDC's not at some level of corruption... I mean, this article proves otherwise.
Exactly. And that it is scary when you say that, though, right? Like, what is the right thing to believe? And I can't sit here and lie to the people we're talking to now or to anybody and tell you, oh, you need to for sure follow this. I don't have that, right? That's what this platform is meant to be. It is meant to simply put the facts out there, the real science, but how can you do that when everybody's getting paid off nowadays, or people are, so I don't know.
You would never see this on mainstream media.
No.
In corporate media, you would never see this.
I highly doubt that we'll ever see, ABC or NBC or MSNBC, any of them, Fox News, CNN, bring this up. I highly doubt we'll see this information.
And that's what I've been saying these past couple years.
Right.
It's like you're not following the science, you're following the politics.
You're following the politics and where the money is. You're following the money. Follow the money line and you'll see where the true evil comes from. You can't question
science and you can't critically think and have a discussion, then you don't believe in science either.
Or if you can't question your own government even, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you can't do that, that's also disconcerting as well. And Manuel, welcome back. Beautiful. I love it when he comments. All right, let's see here. So it is important to understand what misinformation is. Misinformation is the unintentional spread of partially true information. A lot of things can be in misinformation. Often it's after disinformation is spread, and disinformation is the intentional spread of partially true information with the intention of misleading the public. Isn't it possible that the FBI knows a fuller picture? Which is also a good point as well, right? So disinformation is the era we're in, because disinformation gets spread 6 times faster. You will see disinformation come around with the purposeful intent of misguiding and misstruing people and bringing them along a string of information that is completely false, or like you said, partially true, but used towards the intention of misleading people, right? So disinformation is what's scary. Misinformation, being unintentional, is not necessarily a bad thing, but what I like to see is when companies admit that they accidentally spread misinformation, and they say, hey, look, we made a mistake, we are deeply sorry about this, here's hindsight 2020, here's the real facts, right? That's where I can respect somebody more than what we're seeing now, right? There's nobody being held accountable. Nobody's coming out and saying we made a mistake. Nobody wants to, there's no true accountability across any facets of any of these organizations, whether it's Twitter, CDC, the government, whatever. And that's where I have an issue with. But yeah, I mean, it is potential that, the FBI does have a bigger picture, and they of course they have more information to things than the average human, or the average citizen does.
Yeah,
so
it's definitely possible.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say that.
But cut out all the middle crap,
right,
and come out and give a statement. What is not true? What is true?
True.
I mean, just don't come out and say it's disinformation or it's misinformation.
Right.
Come out and address the exact topic.
No, I agree with that, right? Because that's where you gain people's trust, is when you're able to stand up there and say, hey, this was the mistake we made. This is where we're going to hold ourselves accountable. 100% our fault, our bad, right? We'll wipe it clean.
And to be honest, I'm not even interested in that. The fact that the FBI, they reached out to these social media companies and they worked with them. I mean, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I guess so. That's kind of the other point, Manuel, that we're a little concerned about, is that our government, or FBI, whether it's FBI, CIA, whoever it may be, has some sort of influence over a private organization that should be completely ran with good intentions and good ethnic policies, right? But I mean, very clearly, we saw that's not true. They were very, very leaning towards one side, one political bias side compared to another. And that's part of the issue that we have with Twitter right now, is now Elon is kind of cleaning house, and he's making sure that people understand what is true and what actually happened with Twitter. And that is something that I can really respect with Elon and what's going on there. It's just hard to not question when any kind of government organization has some sort of control over your private entities, because that is literally the definition of fascism, right? When your government has control over your private entities. So that is a concerning issue.
For me, all these words are just losing their value.
Right.
Disinformation, misinformation, follow the science. I mean, they just, whether you're on the left or the right, these politicians just have these go-to statements, go-to responses.
Yep.
And it's just repeated and repeated and repeated. So
it doesn't feel like they're genuine, statements. It doesn't feel like it's genuine care towards the people. It just feels kind of robotic at this point.
Yeah. So like I said, enough of the propaganda and the mixed signals.
Right.
Just say what you mean.
Say what you mean. I mean what you say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I 100%
be explicit.
Agree. Yep. So CDC funding decisions based largely on politics and not science, that is an issue, because I like facts. I don't like it when facts are construed towards a specific side. I don't like it when it's I don't like it when facts are used for something else. I really like I really like when you just throw information out there and you allow people to make their decision based off that. Last comment we'll touch up on with Manuel, and we'll move on to the next topic. Here's the thing about that too. The FBI has been involved in telecommunications for a long time. They did it before because of terrorist threats. Now the threat has evolved. The American people are a target by foreign entities. Their objective is to where'd it go? There it is. Okay. No, hold on. The American people are a target by foreign entities. Their objective is to destabilize the country. 100% true, via distrust, which is also true. I don't know this for sure, but it seems like they're trying to stop that by stopping the spread of misinformation. Whether that's right or wrong is hard to say now, in my opinion. No, and I you know what? So I can agree with Manuel pretty big on that. Destabilization has been happening for years in our country, and it is currently happening. With social media and the influence it has, not only in our country, but across the world, foreign governments being able to influence the social medias. Because again, if you have enough money, you can make anything happen, right? They are trying to create chaos in our country, and it's working. It's working very well. We have the left who hates the right. We have the right who hates the left. We have extremes. We have people that don't trust anything our government says. There's a lot of destabilization that is occurring right at this current moment. So I will agree with that, Manuel. And again, hindsight 2020, right? It's hard to know while we're in the moment because we are currently going through this disinformation era, and we're trying to figure our way around it. We're kind of traveling some gray areas here because this is not something we've ever had to deal with before. Again, 20 years ago, we barely had flip phones, and all we used were to call and barely text each other. Now we have the internet and computing processing power that is over trillions time of what was used to even find ourselves on the moon, and it's sitting in our pockets, and we're using it for the most mundane things in the world, right? So it is very concerning to see that destabilization that is occurring, whether, by foreign entities or however it is. And I'm sure the U.S. has used it to do it in other countries, right?
Last week we went over the Twitter files. Yeah. They did it in the Middle East. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. So
we do this to other countries. And another response to that is, let me take in the information and let me decide. I don't need the government deciding for me.
Right, I hear that.
So that's just my view on that.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because look, it's created this mess.
Right. And it has created a lot of distrust within our government, and with, the people we're concerned. We don't know where to get our information from, right? And that part of the reason, again, why we created the platform is to try to allow ourselves to bring out facts, and that's it. Whether, and just like you said, Manny, whether that's right or wrong is hard to say right now, in my opinion. Agreed, right? We don't know what's right and wrong necessarily. We're just letting you all know what the facts are. And, the discussion about right, wrong, whether or not it was beneficial to the people or not, that's all discussion to be had between people that are of a very, very good debate and policies, right? Public policies. And that's kind of the point. But we're just here allowing the information to be shown and allowing people to see what we see and what we all need to see and what we need to discuss. It is good for discussion. That's the point. We want people to discuss and talk and figure out what's right. And even if it's on an everyday level with your family, right? This politics needs to be talked about. We need to understand, and we need to know how our system works, how we're able to support it, how we're able to fight for a system that will bring a better lifestyle for me, you, and everybody else in this country, right? Because with a better educated population, of course your GDP is going to go up, your everything in the country is going to continue to skyrocket. I mean, we've fallen in so many categories, whether it's our education system, our whatever it may be, overall quality of life, our health, we have fallen in so many different categories it's starting to get concerning because the U.S. used to be number one in a lot of things. All right, but let's touch up on this last comment from Manuel, and then we'll move on to more Ukraine news. So, Stu, Manuel asks, how do you know if your analysis is correct if you don't know that you have all the information?
Talking about the Twitter file?
Yeah, which part are we talking about here? I'm kind of lost.
What
What
part are you talking about?
Kind of went on a rant there. I think he's asking the information. So, like when you're saying, let me decide, if what the government is saying, or like let me decide the facts, right? Just give me the facts. What he's saying is, what if you don't have all that information, right? Because that's part of the issue.
We never have all the information.
Right. You're never, and not until after the fact.
I mean, we've seen the FBI suppressing information. We see the CDC suppressing information. I mean, the government doesn't always tell us everything. We're not always going to have the information.
Right. And I think so, yeah, to Manny's point, how do you have an analysis without all the information? You have to make those decisions in a real time, like corporations, for example.
Is the alternative for the government just to take stuff down?
I mean, I would disagree.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Yeah. What's the alternative?
Yeah, it's a hard alternative because, and again, just looking at it from a business perspective, right? We need to double the amount of let's just say, let's make it a very basic thing. Let's say we need to double the amount of orders that we get out. Okay, that's fine. We can double the amount of orders, but with that information, you're not asking us to push out more cases. So we'll just cut the case counts in half and we'll go ahead and just double the orders, right? There's like different ways you can take the information and use it and skew it compared to when you have all the information. Okay, we need to double the orders, but we also need to make sure we're keeping the correct case counts on each one of these orders, right? Okay, now a new problem is brought to light. We have to not only double our orders, but we also have to make sure we're keeping the same amount of cases. So now we're looking at an efficiency issue. We need to make sure we're doing things more efficiently. So I guess the point is you need to make decisions based off the information you have at the time. And unfortunately, it's not always going to be the right decision. And that's just part of the accountability, and my bad. We didn't get information fast enough. We weren't able to, analyze this in the correct way. And unfortunately, we made this decision based off the information we had at that time. So how, I don't know where the right and wrong lies in that. That's a hard question because, again, unless you have all the information directly in front of you and every bit of that information, then yeah, you're gonna make a wrong decision.
I want multiple viewpoints, different kinds of information, and then I can go through that and digest that. I don't want the government digesting it for me.
Right. You want everything, kind of like what I said. You want everything to be thrown out there, right? It doesn't matter if it's the most asinine statement in the entire world. You want everything to be thrown out there, and then you kind of make your decision based off that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because what would be cool is if they presented the information
there has been
as to why they made the decisions they did.
There's been so many things that the government comes out and censors, and it becomes true.
Right.
So that's not the alternative, is for not the government to step in and, oh, we're gonna get rid of this misinformation. Oh, this is disinformation. Get rid of that.
See,
that's not the alternative.
It's
to me.
hard though, because if you play devil's advocate, like Manny said, with as much destabilization that is going on, if we continue to allow it, how chaotic are things going to be, and how much faster would the country fall, right? So I hear what you're saying, but I also see the devil's advocate perspective.
I see that side too.
Yeah.
But also too, I think, how many countries do we spy on?
Right. You're not wrong.
How many countries are we involved in?
You're not wrong.
I mean, we do this to other countries, and I'm sorry, but the government saying, listen to us, we know best, that just does not fly with me.
No, and I get that. And it doesn't fly with a lot of people. There's a lot of people that aren't okay with that. And I'm one of those people. I don't want to have to listen to just what my government says. I want to be able to do things to the extent, of my ability to create a critical analysis and have open, honest discourse with beautiful people like you all, Manuel, Dean, Olivia, everybody else jumping in here tonight. So thank you. Quick plug. Please make sure you all are following all of our socials on Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube and TikTok. Please, what you all do helps us grow and ultimately turn us into a formal entity, and what we plan on doing with this podcast. Not to mention, one of these days we're going to be sponsored by Jocko Fuel, because I'm going to have a discount code for 10% off on Origin.com, American made product, and Jocko Fuel, made by Jocko himself, a retired Navy SEAL. So quick plug, done.
Here's like the last thing I'll say.
Yeah, go ahead.
About all this, about government getting rid of information and stuff,
right?
Ciphering through it. It says, for the second year in a row, the CDC has been caught ignoring science and letting liberal interest groups set its policies.
Yep.
So,
that right there just kind of says it, right? Because, again, it's a political bias. So even if you're going to make decisions without having all the information, don't let political bias in.
All right. So both scenarios, you don't have all the information.
Right. Yeah. So
But at least in the scenario that I want to live in, I have multiple viewpoints, multiple sourced information versus just a censored.
That's the other cool thing. Sourced information from and that's so here's the other problem with transparency, right? That's the last thing I'll touch on. Transparency. If we knew where these, right? So let's say the government came out with a study and they said this was the study. Well, this organization ran the study. Okay, well, where does this organization get their funds from? Does it literally get it from the government? Is it ran by people that are in our government, or is it ran by a complete third party, right? Where's the money coming from? Transparency. Just like I wish politicians would have logos of every corporation that backs them or lobbies for them or everything, right? Like, I want very transparent, follow the money. Where did it come from? How did they get this information? And then you can really make some critical analysis about what's going on. But you're not going to see that kind of transparency anytime soon. So until we see that, that's also another issue with, again, having all the information, because you'll just never truly have it all.
Yeah, that's another thing. The government has not been transparent for a long time.
And they haven't. But I mean, and a lot of the idea as to why is because of public safety, but that's a whole different discussion of its own. We'll touch up on that another time. But let's talk about the U.S. House approving Ukraine aid, including arms, after the visit from Zelensky, which is pretty insane considering we just gave them how many more billions of dollars out of our defense budget.
I have a lot to say about this topic.
Oh, my goodness. U.S. House approves Ukraine aid, including arms, after Zelensky visits. New package would bring U.S. aid to almost $100 billion. U.S. officials say one Patriot system won't charge war. Russia threatens oil output cut in response to price cap. The U.S. House of Representatives gave final approval on Friday to $45 billion aid package for Ukraine, as President Zelensky warned his citizens that Russia could launch attacks over Christmas and urged them to heed air raid alarms. The aid measure passed by the Democratic-controlled House, part of the $1.66 trillion government funding bill that won Senate approval a day earlier, will now go to U.S. President Joe Biden for signing into law. In a tweet thanking Congress and leaders of both parties, Zelensky said it was crucial that Americans are side by side with Ukrainians in the struggle. That is one of my main points. Stop with social media, please. I'm tired of our very weak leaders in this world resorting to social media. I'm sorry, that is getting old. The new military and economic assistance would come atop some $50 billion aid to Ukraine this year, as well as Western sanctions on Russia that now include a cap on Russian oil prices. Russia responded to the cap on Friday by threatening to cut oil output by 5 to 7% early next year through halting sales to countries that support the measure. Zelensky returned from Washington, his first trip outside of Ukraine since Russia invaded on February 24th, with the pledge by the United States of a Patriot surface-to-air missile battery to bolster his hard-pressed air defenses. He long has sought Patriot missiles to help counter 3 months of Russian missiles, drone strikes on civilian infrastructure, including Ukraine's power grid. Millions have been without electricity, heat, and water as temperatures plunge below freezing. That sucks. U.S. officials say, however, that the single Patriot battery that Biden promised Zelensky during the White House meeting on Wednesday will not change the course of the war. In his regular nightly video address, Zelensky warned Ukrainians that Russia could launch more strikes over Christmas, urging them to pay attention to air raid alarms, help one another. Okay. So y'all kind of get the gist of this. But we are sending more money. More money to Ukraine. So thoughts on that, Stu? I kind of want to hear yours. So please go ahead and hit us with what you think.
I have a lot of thoughts on this, so we'll just bounce back. Yeah, so with the money thing, over 100 billion now, right?
Yep. Approaching it.
I think that's more than we've sent to Afghanistan in a year.
For like helping the Taliban become a legitimate.
Well, when we like funding our war.
Or funding our war. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, over 100 billion, and I think all the other countries combined, the other countries that have given to Ukraine, they don't even have. I think it's like 40 billion.
That's crazy.
And I don't know how many countries that is, but that's them combined. So we're like,
we're given number one, of course.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
yeah. And I mean, you know, it goes to a good cause, I would argue, especially considering that
where's the money going?
Right. Well, that's one big issue. Number one, where's the money going? Right. Number two, and I would say a lot of it probably was in whether it be, you know, missiles or instruments of war. Let's put it that way. I would say a lot of this has probably been actual like physical assets of instruments of war to be able to help Ukraine, right? So I don't know if all of it is just pure cash. I would assume not. Of course. Yeah.
No.
So, but
equipment and.
But I'm sure there is cash along with that. And with that, you know, where is that money going? That's up to Zelensky. We're giving him the money, so he kind of chooses.
They don't want an audit.
Oh, how can you audit in times of war when everything's getting destroyed?
They
right?
declined an audit.
Yeah, I mean. Right now,
well, no, our own government can audit where the money's going.
Oh, I mean, we can, try, but there's only so much you can do. Again, how much power do you have in another nation, right? We can give them the money, and then it's like me giving you a gift.
Here's my question: Why are we giving so much more than these other countries? By a long shot.
I cannot answer.
Why us?
I cannot answer. I mean, you know, there's obviously a lot of conspiracies and a lot of issues with Biden and his son being somehow tied to Ukraine. There's a lot of issues there.
You said it was a good thing. Why do you think it was a good thing?
Or
sending money, all this money.
Well, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing to help Ukraine, right? Like they are getting invaded. I mean, I tried, again, from a devil's advocate's perspective, and like Manny said, a significant amount of it money goes to the ammos and the vehicles, which, right? So like instruments of war, whatever. You know, I would say...
It's not all cash flow.
No, not by any means.
Yeah.
This is where it gets complicated, right? So I think it's a good thing that we're helping Ukraine because I do believe in freedom. I believe that Ukraine does deserve to be a sovereign nation. I believe they deserve that. But part of the issue for me is like looking at what we do here in America and how we're helping ourselves. So it's a hard balance because I know we are significantly better off than Ukraine as of this moment, right? We're not having bombs dropped on our head over Christmas. We're not having to go without electric. Now, granted, there was I don't know if you saw this, but there was like a big energy surge across the whole U.S. on Christmas Day. There was a lot of people that actually lost power. Don't know why that was. So interesting thoughts there. But yeah, I mean, we're not, like, looking at it again from a devil's advocate perspective. I'm not getting bombs dropped on my head. I've never once in my life had the experience of warfare in our own country. So I can understand wanting to help other nations and wanting to, right? But like you said, where are world organizations? We should be bringing this together with multiple other countries, not just us, right? It should not just be us, and we shouldn't be giving more money than the next couple countries combined, right? That's kind of where it's a bit of an issue. And so Manny comes in with, he says, I can answer that question holistically. In person might be better, though. Essentially, it boils down to the fact that it's in our own interest to do so, short-term and long-term. We're also in the best position to do so. Kind of like I would say with Taiwan, right? Taiwan is the biggest chip maker in the world. So, with what they got going on, it is in our best interest to honestly save Taiwan from China and what's happening over there right now. So I would say we should probably focus on more Taiwan. But Manny, I am interested. I would like to hear where, if you can
where
just
is the interest?
Yeah, where that interest is in Ukraine now. It can just be very brief, a couple points. I just like, is it oil?
I'd like to
Is
give a
it
couple points.
Electric? Let me hear it.
A couple facts.
Hear it.
In 2014, Ukraine overthrew its own government.
Right.
And it's supposed to be a democracy.
Correct.
So does that sound like a democracy? Why did they overthrow their government? If that happened here, I mean, the left always says that the right tried to overthrow its own government with the January 6th stuff.
Right.
I mean, Ukraine actually did it.
Yeah, Ukraine actually did have a coup and overthrew their government. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know to the extent of what kind of coup it was. I don't know if it was like a military, kind of coup, or I don't really understand where Zelensky came from. So I forgive me for not having that kind of history with Ukraine. This is exactly why I would love to have a guest who's like very knowledgeable about this kind of stuff. This would be awesome to talk about, because I would love to understand, why did Ukraine, number one, overthrow their government? What was the issues that was creating the people?
And if I'm not mistaken, they have Obama saying that like USA had a hand in that.
It wouldn't shock me. I mean, I know the Obama administrations before that have definitely, like, even in the Middle East, right? We were trying to destabilize these communist governments by helping out the rebels. And we were actually supplying them with, and now, unfortunately, in Obama's situation, that actually turned out to be Al-Qaeda that he was funding at the time. But we didn't realize they would turn into a terrorist organization. They were supposed to be a rebel organization to overthrow the government, if I'm not mistaken. Now, again, my history could be off on that a little bit, because the Middle East is so confusing, right? And that's the other thing. There's so much information that we don't have behind those governments, the people, the culture, what's been happening there, which is, again, why I love talking to people about that.
You think they could do that here?
They wanted to. I think it can be done anywhere. Like, with the right amount of disinformation, with the right amount of tactics. I mean, we're humans at the end of the day. At the end of the day, somebody knows how to work our brains better than we do, and they know what gets us. I mean, again, when you look at technology or whatever, how it's taken over the human psyche and literally become involved in our everyday lives. Of course it can be done. Somebody out there knows about the human brain a lot better than we do, and they know how to do it. They know how to work it.
But if it's a democracy and the United States is trying to protect Ukraine's democracy, right, why do they have a hand in overthrowing the government in 2014?
Again,
so I'm not saying what's right or wrong here. I'm just trying to do some critical thinking.
More than likely self-interest. Right? Why does anybody get involved with anything in their own individual lives?
Yeah, I'm just posing a question.
Right.
They claim they care about democracy.
Right.
But then they do this? Well,
so Ukraine, from my understanding, just thinking about it, right, they were not a democracy at first. At first, they were communist. And with the overthrow, the intention was to become democratic or democracy, from my understanding. But I could be off on that. So
I'm pretty sure
they were.
I'm pretty sure the one in 2014. I'll have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure the one he was elected.
Yeah, was when Zelensky was elected.
No, the one before him was elected. The one they overthrew.
I would love to look this up right now.
Look it up.
Yeah, give me a second. Go ahead and take over.
No, but I'll say a couple more things. Before this, well, it might have already started, but Boris Johnson from the UK, remember him?
Yep. Who's trying to get back in, by the way, ever since what's-her-face.
He pressured Zelensky to stop the peace talks with Russia.
Right.
There were peace talks between him and Putin, and then they stopped. Boris Johnson urged Zelensky to stop peace talks. Now, why would he do that?
Great question. I have no idea.
Why are they trying to stop peace talks?
Well, here's this. 2014 coup in Ukraine. The background and implications of the 2014 far-right coup in Kyiv, which overthrew the pro-Russian president. Pro-Russian president. That's why. So, okay, Russia did have... So right now, the argument with Ukraine and Russia... according to this, yes. The pro-Russian president,
so he was elected.
Viktor Yanukovych,
so democracy chose him.
Is critical understanding the current Ukraine-Russia war. This coup was openly supported by the U.S. and European imperialism and implemented primarily by far-right shock troops such as Right Sector and the neo-Nazi Svobodna Party. It represented the temporary accumulation of long-standing efforts by U.S. imperialism to install a puppet regime on the borders of Russia and brought the world a major step closer to a war between the largest nuclear powers, the U.S. and Russia. Ukraine has since been systematically built up as launching pad for the NATO war against Russia. The regime change prompted the outbreak of an ongoing civil war in the east of Ukraine between Russia-backed separatists and the U.S.-backed Ukrainian army that had claimed tens of thousands of lives, displaced millions. In the U.S., the coup was a catalyzer for an even more aggressive campaign against Russia and a significant shift to the right among layers of the upper middle class. U.S. imperialism and NATO had funded the Ukrainian state and far-right forces with billions of dollars. So from what I'm getting is, essentially, it was controlled by Russia, and the U.S. wanted control in Ukraine. So what they did is they funded a coup, a coup and then they elected Zelensky. So, or kind of installed Zelensky. So, I don't know. It's a great question. And these are answers that I, way above like anything we've talked about in depth. And this is something I would love to talk about in depth because, we've seen this before in the Middle East. Again, when we would supply these regimes with billions of dollars to try to overthrow their government for our own self-interest. And that doesn't shock me. I mean, what's better for Russia to have, whatever we're going for in Ukraine, or for us to have control of it? And that's kind of probably their thought process, right? So I don't know. And I mean, these leaders are making decisions that we have no idea why. These leaders are making decisions that aren't very transparent and open to us. So that's a good question.
So I'm aware of like USA's intentions of this kind of stuff.
Right.
But I'm just saying their words don't match their actions, they do around the world.
Right. I see what you're saying.
That's my whole point.
Oh yeah, and it's a great point. So, okay, let's touch up on Manuel's points, and then we'll move on to the next article. So he said it's really hard to explain in points because you have to understand the mechanics in the international system and the history behind it. But here's a try, and that's the other problem. It's just so much history to all these countries. Historically, wars have happened because no country has had enough power to keep the world at bay. We created the current world order out of the ashes of World War II, which is true. In order to do so, the idea was that it wasn't just us, but all of the Western society, which is like where NATO comes from. Problem is that because we were the strongest country, we are the de facto leaders of the world order. Not necessarily wrong. It is whether we like it or not, our responsibility to maintain it. A lot of good has come from it, some bad, but a lot of good, including virtually no wars in Europe, unlike the way it was prior to the end of World War II, which is also true. And number two, if we let a rival win a war, they always go further and eventually it reaches us. That's just the mechanics of the international system, which isn't wrong either, right? Communism has always tried to find a way to the U.S. or any other country. And I mean, I would argue we're still trying to contain communism. So taking away Ukraine from Russia, taking away Thailand or Taiwan from China is one step closer to eliminating the hold that those major communist superpowers have over them, whether it be supplies, the economic landscape or the geographical landscape, the economic current system in those countries, whatever it may be. So I believe Manuel has a good point there. And, again, a lot of this comes back to history. And it's tough to keep in order. But yeah, I mean, and he would say authoritarianism, not necessarily communism. Fair enough. That's the other, authoritarianism, fascism, communism, socialism, they're all so different. There's economic systems between like socialism and capitalism. There's your government ran systems between like communism and fascism, right? Like it's so like they all have so many different definitions of what happens there, but it just so happens that these guys are communists. So yeah,
I got something to say.
Go ahead.
If that's true, why aren't we getting, we backed Saudi Arabia in the Yemen war. So we talked about this last week, that Bernie Sanders is going to bring something to the floor about stopping the funding for that.
Yep.
And that never happened. They're going to renegotiate, is what they say. So my question is, why don't we try to stop that war?
Oh, man. Great question. I mean, why don't we try to stop a lot of different wars? I mean, right now there's a war on, in my opinion, human rights in China.
I know we can't stop every war, but I'm just saying they're inconsistent. The government is inconsistent.
Inconsistent in what choices they make.
That's my whole point. They're just inconsistent.
Just like anything else, I'm sure they have like a prioritization list. Hey, what's more important? This, or
has there been any talk for peace?
Like world peace?
No. Peace talks between Ukraine and Russia. I never hear... I don't know if the USA has been pushing for peace talks. Like I told you earlier, Boris Johnson from the UK wanted peace talks to stop between Zelensky and Vladimir Putin. I don't know why. But that's just a fact.
I don't know why. I think it would be, I don't know if those peace talks have happened. I think it would be good for it to happen, but I think ultimately Russia will not back down until they have control.
So, what's the end game?
The end game is somebody has a larger control over Ukraine, in my opinion. Whether it be the Western U.S. and NATO, UN type organization, or it's Russia. And as we've seen, we see Russia, China, a lot of Middle Eastern countries starting to form their own kind of, like with the world currency, what we talked about there, where they're trying to go back to the gold standard. We've seen where they're making a lot of leaps and bounds to kind of become an organization of their own, right? So it's concerning to see that there are kind of two sides that are like ramping up to be against each other. I mean, ultimately we'd like to see, good things here, but I don't know. It's tough to say, man. It really is. We'll touch up on these last two comments here. So Manuel says, just speculating here, but it's prioritization, like I said. Like Nave said, no talks since the beginning of the Russian invasion. Russia really just demands too much, including land that isn't theirs. Exactly. I mean, they just want control over Ukraine. That's ultimately what they want. And they tried annexing 4 different cities. And now there have been, discussions that maybe Ukraine wants to stay under control of Russia.
It just seems to me that certain entities did not want the peace talks to continue.
Yeah. I mean, I can...
Between Zelensky and Putin.
Yeah, and I can agree with that. I don't know why certain entities wouldn't want that. That's a great question. maybe to create more destabilization within either country. That way they can kind of put their own self-interest out there. I don't know. I mean, it could be a number of things. We don't have all that information, so we'll never know.
So this is the end game for Ukraine. Like, where does it end? Does it end with Vladimir Putin being overthrown?
Or with Russia?
Yeah. What?
The end game for Russia is try to have as much power and influence as possible, in my opinion.
No, but I'm saying Ukraine, like a Ukraine victory. What does that look like?
Oh, Zelensky stays president for goodness knows how long, and he stays instilled as the U.S.'s individual to continue to have relations with.
What does Russia and Putin do?
Great question. We'll see what happens.
They say, yeah, you're right. We're just gonna.
I mean, ultimately,
we'll
if you run out of resources, or if you run out of the opportunity to continue to take over that country, then yeah, I mean, you're screwed, right? So like, he's just got to call it quits sooner or later. Him in that country, if Russia's sooner or later has got to call it quits, or we got to call it quits, one of the two. And sooner or later, one side's gonna give, and we'll see what happens in the.
I'd like to see more push for peace.
Well, that ain't gonna happen. So we'll see what happens. Dean says, I would like to take I would look at the powers Yemen has compared to the powers Russia has. Russia is more of a threat to the U.S., agreed there, and the world compared to Yemen. That's just my guess. I don't know a whole lot about the war in Yemen. But yeah, I mean, like I said, prioritization. Like, Russia's our number one threat right now, especially compared to somebody like Yemen, right? So we are really concerned about Russia and what they have going on, and same with China. We're very worried about the technological race that we have with China right now.
If I'm not mistaken, Saudi Arabia is a bigger power than Yemen, and we're backing Saudi Arabia, is my point.
Well, it could be that because we have interests there, right?
We do.
Yeah, so there you go. There you go. I mean, there you go.
So this goes back to my whole point. The USA is not interested in saving democracy, saving people, saving your freedom. It's interested in its own interest.
Self-interest.
Yeah.
I mean, like most other countries, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
100%.
The propaganda of this war is very
interesting.
Evident.
Yeah, evident. I mean, yeah, because but again, so here's the question though, right? And it ultimately comes down to this is the question: is it better for us to have control of what's happening in Ukraine or Russia? Like, what would you rather have, us or Russia? You see what I'm saying? Like, don't get me wrong. I see exactly what you're saying, right? But
I don't want to be involved in it, to be honest.
Yeah, no, right. Like, just pull everything out. Let's worry about America first, right?
Yeah.
Not going to happen. But, I mean, I agree with you.
I know that.
I agree with you, right? Like, let's focus on ourselves. Let's become more self-sufficient, But, again, when you look at it from this perspective, either Russia or the U.S., there is no other choice. Either Russia or U.S. has more influence over Ukraine. Who do you want it to be? Us. Well, and that's just ultimately.
But that's our view.
That's our view, and Russia wants it to be them.
Right.
Just like anything else in life, man. People are just going to have adversaries, and we're all going to battle each other. We're all going to have, different thoughts on it. It's, interesting thought process, but and that's just humans. That's humans in general. So back to the human psyche. A lot of it's psychology, unfortunately.
Was Russia's invasion provoked? Like Ukraine's?
I would say Russia just wants to have a power hold over Ukraine, but that's my opinion.
Good talks.
Good talks. Which, if they give, is very Neville Chamberlain-like, and and we all know how that went. Big part of it is what Manuel thinks. Come back up. I think a victory for Ukraine is Ukraine keeps their land and the government, and a win for Russia is that Russia claims what they think is theirs. Correct. I agree with that, Dean. Shouldn't we be, Manuel asked, but aren't those true, though? Isn't it a plus that democracy is more stable in Ukraine, that they win their freedom? Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of where I'm sitting at, right? And unfortunately, yeah, I mean, it's just coming down to we're going to be involved regardless. Us and Russia are going to be involved regardless. And if we had to choose a winner, ultimately, we would choose us. And that's just how it is. Life. So we ultimately choose us. here's to the U.S. But yeah, let's move forward. Great discussion there. Great talk. It just kind of it got us to a lot of the
Everyone should look into the Saudi Arabia and Yemen more.
That's an interesting one to go over as well. So let's talk about the Supreme Court allows Trump era border policy to remain for now. Alrighty. The Supreme Court is forcing Biden administration to continue the controversial pandemic border policy called Title 42, which while legal challenges unfold according to a Tuesday order. Why it matters. The expected December 21st expiration of the policy, which has cited the pandemic to allow border officials to rapidly expel migrants and asylum seekers at the border for more than 2.5 years, was delayed after the Supreme Court intervened at the request of Republican challengers. Migrants have been denied access to asylum process more than 2.4 million times under the other, according to the Department of Homeland Security data. The CDC implemented the policy during the Trump administration to block migrants from coming to the U.S. as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Supreme Court approved a last-minute effort by 19 GOP-led states to block the termination of Title 42. In December of 2020 filing, the Biden administration had urged the High Court to let the Trump-era Title 42 policy end, but requested a 2-day buffer to allow them to prepare for the shift in operations. The big picture, the Biden administration has been preparing for the possibility of as many as 14,000 migrants coming across the border daily at the end of Title 42, which I don't think you can actually handle 14,000 immigrants a day, let's be honest. But even with Title 42 in place, border resources have been overwhelmed, with the daily number of border crossings surpassing 9,000 multiple times this month exactly. So if you're expecting 14,000 a day and you can barely handle 9,000 a couple times a month, what do you expect? El Paso, Texas, in particular, has been scrambling to find shelter for thousands of migrants and asylum seekers who have been released into the community and on the streets in recent weeks. Meanwhile, the White House said in a statement Tuesday that it will comply with the Supreme Court's ruling, but will continue to prepare for the policy's eventual expiration. We are advancing our preparations to manage the border in a secure, orderly, and humane way when Title 42 eventually lifts, and will continue expanding legal pathways for immigration, the White House said, adding to that Congress needs to pass comprehensive immigration reform. The Department of Homeland Security said they'll continue to fully enforce our immigration laws, but echoed calls for immigration reform in a statement too. Woo. Bless. Okay. So real quick, just some details. In the 5-4 unsigned order, the court said it would hear arguments on the case in February 20 session. So we'll just kind of leave it there. But let's talk about the border and what's happening there. I mean, this is a very concerning issue. I mean, with this many people trying to cross the border at once, it has obviously been a very serious issue. What is your thoughts, Stu, on exactly what we can do with this border? I mean, I don't have an answer for that. I mean, if we can barely handle, like I said, 9,000 immigrants coming over every couple times a month, how could we even imagine handling 14,000 immigrants a day? What do we do?
I think we start by asking this. We need to start by asking this large group of migrants of why are you coming here, just to get their perspective.
I think that's a good idea.
That'd be a start. And my own belief is that we need to be very welcoming and accept the ones that want to be here and want to come here,
right,
because they love America, to let them in. I understand we don't want criminals and stuff.
Right.
That's not what I'm advocating for.
And I mean, there are...
So I think from what I understand, the system to come here is very lengthy.
It is.
And hard.
Very lengthy.
And when you live in a country that does not have freedoms, maybe you don't have clean drinking water, you don't have air conditioning, you just don't have some first world, necessities.
Right.
I don't know if they're necessities, but
Privileges, I guess.
first world privileges.
Yeah, is a good way of putting it.
You could see why they'd want to come here. I mean, we were born here, and maybe we should start talking to the people and asking them, why do you want to come here? I mean, I think we know why they want to come here. We have a pretty good
idea, right?
So that's my take on this. I mean, I just think, like I said, the process is lengthy and it's tough, and I'm not saying anything's right or wrong, but I mean, they want freedom, they want a good life for their kids, for their families, for themselves.
Right.
But then another thing also too, why I think there's such a, this stuff that goes on at the border is drug related.
Yeah, there is a lot of issues there.
Smuggling of drugs, and I think that needs to be addressed too.
So to leave it at the factual side, the immigration policy needs to be figured out. We definitely want to have some sort of solution for that, because it is very difficult to imagine handling that many immigrants a day. There's a reason they're coming to our country, and we need to acknowledge that, and we need to understand that these people, like you just said, love America and they want to be here. So we should allow them to be here and say, you know what, thank you for choosing our country. Let's use that to our advantage, right? With the amount of immigrants that we would have coming across, part of it, and again, this is just all, people are going to look at me like I'm crazy for this, but there is so much of this, of the United States, that is unpopulated. Like when you look at the desert and you look at all these areas that are just so unpopulated, it's crazy how we have some technologies that are just out of this world, but we don't have the technology to, let's say, like, create a self-sustaining water, for example, right? Las Vegas, over there in Nevada, the river or the lake over there is about to dry up in the next 4 to 5 years. It's crazy to me that we don't have technology that allows for us to have a self-sustaining water system, right? To be able to kind of expand where we can live. It's hard to live in the desert because you have no water, right? You have no access to water. You have none of the essential things that we need. With the amount of money that we put into our defense budget, like I said, if we just kind of stayed away from world issues and started refocusing some of our budgets towards things like that, we could actually become, again, very self-sufficient. We could actually create more cities. We could create more living space for people, and we could use immigrants to help us with that. They could literally create the lands that they're about to live on in the U.S. Do you know how grateful and how awesome that would feel for those individuals to be able to come to this land? We give them the opportunity to build a life for themselves if we had that kind of technology, right? And that's the problem, is we're just wasting so much money.
People that want to come here and contribute to our economy and all that stuff, buy a house, have a good life, live the American dream, as they say. Yeah. That only benefits this country and benefits the people.
And I get so sick of people talking about how immigrants steal jobs and crap. Shut up. Stop. I have worked. I still do work with immigrants who have come over looking for a better life and who have literally watched their own family get shot because they choose to be a certain religion compared to what the majority live by. And I've talked to these people. They are just grateful to be here, right? They're not complaining about their first world issues. Look, these people have seen the worst of the worst, and all they want is a good life with their families. They want to be able to come to their home at the end of the day, watch a little bit of TV, and be able to sit down and just enjoy time with their family. I mean, can we ask for anything better than that for somebody who has those kind of American dream values, to just be with their family and to create something bigger than themselves, and to contribute towards a country that we love so much, right? That we want to see the best out of. Dawn, good night. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. We're almost done ourselves. We got one more article and we're wrapping up. This is actually one of the longest episodes I think we've had altogether. But
Sorry.
no, I love it. Besides the point, but yeah. So, and that's kind of my take, right? Like, there's so many different things we could be doing with immigrants and how we can use, I don't want to say use them, right, because that sounds so bad, but how we can allow them to help themselves in a country that they want to be in so bad. And just kind of touch up on Manuel here. Perhaps not why do you want to come here, but what caused you to come here? What was the last straw, right? Because 99% of them, and that's essentially what we meant by that. But and most of the time, I can almost guarantee you it's for safety. It's for the safety of their own family. Good life, yeah. But let's see. Because look, no one is comfortable leaving their country at birth. And I can only imagine, like I'm not comfortable leaving the US, right? But like I would also love to explore. I would love to understand what it's like in other countries. Doesn't matter where you are from, it's hard and emotional at the same time. Something causes the migration, correct? Especially from long distances. And we need to understand it better in order to address it efficiently and appropriately. And I 100%
That's why I just think it won't get solved because
we're not asking those questions.
They're going to play politics, and that's where it's going to get us.
Yep. And you'll never get down to the root cause again until you actually ask those questions. But then let's just say, hypothetically, let's say those questions are the last straw is the security of my family and because I don't trust my own nation.
Right.
What do? We can't continue to get into more world affairs.
When your back's against the wall, you're going to do some things.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to do what you have to do for your family. Yeah. It's just what it is. 100%. But yeah, what sucks is if it has anything to do with the security they feel in their own country, that's hard because there's nothing we can do about that. I mean, there is, and I'm sure we'll attempt it, but again, we're just getting involved in more world affairs, whereas we could pool our resources towards exactly what I was talking about, finding ways to make self-sufficient systems to allow ourselves to live in economic systems, or ecological systems that aren't necessarily self-sustaining right now, and allow us to push for whoever does decide to come into this country to help build it themselves, right? We'll give you invaluable lessons on how to become craftsmen, how to work, and how to be able to build things, right? And how to help our economy and our infrastructure and our country overall. So, I mean, yeah, I agree with Manuel. Definitely have to understand why they came here, and I agree with you on that.
That's why you talk to them.
Yeah, just ask questions. Hey, what was it that forced you to leave your home country to come here?
Against immigration, right? You want to be strict on the border. These people need to ask too.
Yeah, like what
you need to talk about it and have a conversation.
What was it that pushed you to leave your country, come here? Like, cause like Manuel said, I couldn't imagine. Like, I couldn't imagine if the U.S. had pushed me to my last straw to where I had to go live somewhere. I don't want to live anywhere else. Mm-hmm. Right? I love where we live. I love where we are. But if something pushed me to that limit, what was it and why did it happen? So, great questions. Great topic there. So, let's move on to the last one we got. Let's talk about good old Wells Fargo.
Together we'll go far.
Yeah, Wells Fargo. So let me move this out of the way. Oh. All right, pull this back. Sorry, y'all. Without Ryan here, it makes it a little more difficult for me. I gotta do a little bit of everything. All right. So Wells Fargo to pay $3.7 billion settling charges. It wrongfully seized homes and cars. Oh wow. So Wells Fargo has agreed to $3.7 billion deal with regulators to settle charges that it took advantage of customers of their auto loans and mortgages and bank accounts. Oh my goodness. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau said that for some customers, the bank's wrongdoing had especially dire consequences. People had their cars wrongfully repossessed by Wells Fargo, and the bank took actions that resulted in borrowers wrongfully losing their homes. According to the order from the CFPB, other customers were charged improper overdraft fees on their checking accounts, Wells Fargo's rinse-repeat cycle of violating the law has harmed millions of American families, said CFPB Director Rohit Chopra. The Bureau says the wrongdoing goes back more than a decade, with some of it continuing into this year. The CFPB is ordering Wells Fargo to refund billions of dollars to consumers across the country. Under the terms of the order, Wells Fargo will pay $2 billion to millions of customers who were harmed. The bank will also pay $1.7 billion in fines. Goodness. So CFPB official speaking on background said customers who lost their cars after they were wrongfully repossessed will receive a base amount of $4,000 each and could receive more money depending on their particulars in their case. The Wells Fargo CEO Charlie Scharf said in a statement, "We and our regulators have identified a series of unacceptable practices that we have been working systematically to change and provide customer remediation where warranted. The bank farmed the settlement as a way to move forward and reform the company's scandal-ridden past." Frame the settlement. This far-reaching agreement is an important milestone in our work to transform the operating practices at Wells Fargo and to put these issues behind us, said Scharf. Our top priority is to continue to build a risk and control infrastructure that reflects the size and complexity of Wells Fargo and run the company in a more controlled discipline. So we'll stick with that. Well, here, we'll finish up with this. Over the past decade, the bank has endured a series of high-profile and embarrassing debacles, including the revelations NPR reported on in 2016 that the banks had hyper-aggressive internal sales pressure had resulted in bank employees opening millions of checking and debit and credit card accounts for customers without their knowledge in order for the employees to meet them. A lot of controversy coming out of Wells Fargo. So for anybody who banks there, be cautious because Wells Fargo is corrupt. No. So I mean, this is pretty concerning, though. I mean, because you got to think, man. I mean, the amount of lives they probably ruined at the time when they repossessed those homes or cars or whatever. I mean, that is harsh. I couldn't imagine losing my home or car right now, right? Like, this is where my life is, right? Like, I couldn't imagine somebody coming and repossessing it. So it's very concerning to see a financial institution that is that big doing something like this, and it really is unfortunate. But I mean, Wells Fargo has had their fair share of issues in years past. Like opening up accounts without the customer's acknowledgement and issues previous to that. And I know people who have worked at Wells Fargo that have enjoyed the atmosphere while they were there, but they even admitted that, yeah, there was a lot of pressure when they were there. And a lot of people ended up leaving the company due to that pressure. So I don't know. Any thoughts on this one, Stu?
Is anyone going to jail?
Good question. I doubt it, but we'll see what happens.
I mean, essentially, they stole people's stuff.
I mean, yeah.
What happens when you steal stuff?
Go to jail. Or prison. Depends on how bad, how much, what degree. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with that, right?
You stole a car.
Now, their argument is going to be, oh, it was based on our policies and what we had gone. Yeah, they're gonna find a way to tiptoe that line, of course. But yeah, I mean, it's very unfortunate the kind of dent.
I don't see anyone being held accountable.
And I mean, what, $4,000 checks? What is that going to get you? Not a car. That's not going to get you anything. I mean, $4,000 nowadays barely carries any weight. Used vehicles are up so much. I'll give you an example. One of the vehicles I bought back in 2000 and I think it was like 18. I bought it and I've used it plenty. And right now it's being valued at like $2,500 more than what I bought it for. And that is simply because of the price of used vehicles and how that's skyrocketing right now. So that in itself is an interesting thought also, right? Now, whether it actually sells for that or not, I don't know. But, I mean, $4,000 isn't going to do a darn thing for anybody. I mean, yeah, nobody's going to deny $4,000, but I don't see them being like, oh my goodness, thanks. You only took my one vehicle that I had in my life that I was able to get from work and back, and then I got fired from my job because I couldn't get to work and I lost this amount of money due to that, but thanks for the $4,000. Like, I don't know what that solution looks like. I mean, me personally, I would go case by case. I would take any individual who was affected by this. I would say, how much money, like if you did lose your job, how much were you making? Let's go over the pay stubs. Let's check your, bonuses and everything. What would you have made over the past year had they not repossessed your vehicle, right? And that's what Wells Fargo will pay you back. That's my idea of accountability, fairness, and equity. But other people have different opinions. So, yeah, that's kind of my touching up thoughts on that. Anything else?
Seems to be reoccurring, all these scandals.
Oh, I mean,
Wells Fargo.
Yeah, I mean, sooner or later they're just going to start losing the trust of people that are banking with them, and they'll move on to other.
I saw Elizabeth
entities.
Warren wants to break the company up.
I didn't know that. Well, I wonder why. It's not like they control that much of the market. I mean, well, they control a lot of the market.
I'm not sure how much they control. But...
Yeah, but I mean, I couldn't imagine. I mean, with the amount of different banks out there right now, I couldn't imagine that they would actually let that go through. I mean, yeah, because what was it before it was Wells Fargo? It was Wachovia, and then what bought them out?
Fargo.
I thought there was a different name, and then they came up with the name Fargo. But you could be right. I'll trust that. So yeah, I mean, Wells Fargo bought out Wachovia. I mean, so what? We're just gonna split it back into Wachovia and Wells Fargo again? I mean, what? Like, I don't know where you go from that. From there, if you really want to break up anything, let's talk about the. There's only a few things that are like monopolized in this country. One of them is the electrical grid. If you notice, especially in like our local area that we know of, there's only 2 places to get electric from. Right, and you'll see that across, I'm sure, many different counties and states and what have you. But yeah, that's it for the topic. So, if nobody else has anything else on Wells Fargo, I'm looking at a good stopping point here.
It's just interesting that nobody went to jail. I mean, I know over $3 billion is a lot of money for a company to pay, but.
That's a lot of money, but it's also a lot of lives they messed up.
Yeah,
so
and they've done it before.
Held accountable for it. Yeah, and they've done it before. And when you're opening up random accounts for people, that's a big deal of its own, because you should be telling your customers everything you're providing for them. So, when people start losing faith in the company is when they'll actually start to go downhill. But until we see that happen,
so I see this: the top 5 institutions make up more than half. 57.21% of the total bank assets in the U.S.
Well, as long as one organization doesn't have up to 33%, they're okay. So yeah, I mean that's again, you're tiptoeing that line, of course, but as long as one doesn't have 33, you're set. So that's the rules of monopolization here in the U.S.
Yeah, I guess the takeaway is. Think about banking with Wells Fargo before you go into it. Think about it.
Think about the decisions you're going to make and who you want to bank with, and do some research on that organization. So, cool deal.
I think local banking is probably the way to go.
You can, yeah. I mean, I personally, I'm not going to disclose where I bank, but yeah. I mean, I think credit unions and local banking are definitely a lot better. Make sure you take cash on vacations, because you can't. I mean, if you don't want to get that extra charge of pulling out the ATM.
You tell them that you're going on vacation,
right? But I'm saying, like, if it's cash only, you get that 2.5% charge, like other ATMs or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, so let's shut this down. We've been on for an hour 45 now. It's been a very long episode, very enjoyable episode. Thank you all for coming around. Yeah, thank you for the discourse. It was very fun. Of course, we miss Ryan tonight, but that's okay. He'll be back with us next week. Potential no episode next week. It just depends on scheduling and whatnot there. So we will see what happens. But as of right now, it is on. So thank you all so much. I really do. We really appreciate you all coming and joining us tonight at the Fact Is podcast. You know, like I posted a little bit earlier on the Fact Is page. You know, we plan to do a lot of things with this podcast coming into 2023, and this is the last episode of 2022, going into the new year, starting this Saturday at midnight. So to all of you out there, please have a fantastic New Year's. Want to make sure that you all enjoy it going into 2023 positive. You know, it's going to be a great year. I've enjoyed 2022, but I think 2023 is about to be the best year of my life, I personally think. And hopefully I can take those words, turn it into discipline, and turn it into reality. So that's the idea. But yeah, Dean comes on with one of the last comments saying another great week. Thanks for everything, guys. Saw some new faces watching tonight, so let's get some more discussion going. I 100% agree, Dean. We are going to plan on getting more discussion every single night, because here at the Fact Is podcast, we believe that we all have more in common than we don't. So that's why it's important that you not only share this podcast with your friends and family, but also with those that you disagree with. Because when we all come together at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, just in different ways. So this was a fantastic 107th episode. Couldn't ask for anything better. So thank you all, Manuel, Olivia, Dawn, and Dean. Thank you all for commenting, coming in, joining in the discourse. To the up to, I think it even hit like 10, 12 people. To everybody who came in just to watch and to be able to enjoy this episode with us, thank you so much. We truly appreciate it. That's what we want. Just please make sure you share, like, comment, help spread this. The idea is we reach as many people as possible. And if you disagree with us, go ahead and start commenting and telling us what you think. You know, that's the entire purpose.
We'd love to hear your opinion.
We want to have open, honest discourse, and we don't care who you are. We've had a well diversified amount of people on this show so far, and many more to come. So with that being said, thank you all for joining us for the 107th episode of the Fact Is podcast. We were your host, Nate Moses.
And I'm Stu Mowbray.
And we will see you all next week for the 108th episode, and look forward to seeing you